Hello, everybody. Welcome to Make Santa Fe. As Tracy said, my name's James. I'm the executive director here at the space, and it's so fantastic to see this room filled with people. As you can imagine, this is quite different than what we normally do here. This room is typically filled with tables and projects and things, people making things. But Tracy was kind enough to move the Creative Mornings event into our space, and I'm very happy to be able to show it off. So that's really exciting. Today, I'm going to talk about my favorite subject in the entire world, which is failure. This is something that I have really tried to embody and tried to showcase to other people as a requirement in any creative pursuit, right? And so that's what we're going to talk about, and I love it. So like Tracy said, I do a lot of things, and everything that I do sort of revolves around this idea of creativity. Being the leader of a nonprofit, there's a lot of creativity in there, but personally, I also practice things like fabrication and design and photography, scenic design, building things, etc. And everything that I'm going to talk about today is not new ideas, right? In fact, I've got a little video.
Telling people how to be creative is easy. It's only being it that's difficult.
It's work, it's crafting, and it's trying again and trying to get it right.
Experiment with entirely new, different ways of working.
Learn from it and start over.
And when that stops working, you try something new again.
No tolerance for failure, no innovation.
Innovation, I think, was putting good ideas into practice.
Creativity is not a talent.
If you're not prepared to be wrong, you will never come up with anything original.
No vulnerability, no creativity.
It is not a talent. It is a way of operating.
So there's some familiar faces in those videos, right? John Cleese, Brene Brown, people that I really admire, and I'm sure people that you've heard of, or seen their entire talks. I've basically collected a whole bunch of these ideas from these thought leaders and put them into this talk. And so I don't want to take ownership of any of these things. These are all ideas that are sort of championed by these other individuals, but I'm in a position as a leader in the creative community in Santa Fe, as the executive director of a nonprofit makerspace, to remind people and to help champion and to help persist all of these ideas, right? And so that's what I'm going to do today. I'm collecting all of these ideas and I'd like to share them with you today. This month's theme is innovation. And to me, innovation is the practical implementation of creativity, right? When we're creative, we have the ability to innovate, and we can only innovate through a creative process. Who here would consider themselves a creative or has some, probably everybody in the room, right? So this is probably obvious to you all, but you can't be innovative without being creative. And yet, we're constantly stealing time away from our creative process, right? We constantly do that. So to be creative is to literally be creative. It is a way of being in your life, right? And it's different than work mode. I think anybody that makes money in a creative world runs into this problem, right? We sit down, we do work, and we're in production. We're constantly producing. So I think that there's two modes that we exist in as creative professionals, creative mode and work mode. Creative mode is the one I'm going to talk about today. It is the exploration of ideas, right? It's literally conjuring new ideas out of thin air. And that is distinctly different from work mode, which is the production of those ideas, right? It's like sitting down to do the work. It's not the creative process. And I'm sure y'all can relate to trying to sit down and be creative and then get inundated by the work stuff, right? Those 45 unread emails, all of those notifications, those missed phone calls, the new meetings that you have to do, all of that stuff invades our creative process. And so we need to find a way to preserve that creative process. And it's hard. It's very hard because work mode is easier. It's easier to produce than it is to be creative, right? It's easier to do the simple, immediate thing than it is to do the big things that we're not so sure about. And everything that is creative is something we're not sure about, right? It's hard. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to talk about the 5 things that are required to be in creative mode. So I think that there are 5 requirements. And they are space, time, resilience, confidence, and humor. Right? These are all required. None of these are optional, right? You can't be creative with only 3 out of the 5. You have to have all of these things to be able to be creative. So the first one is to have a physical space in which to do your creative work, right? It seems obvious. This is one of the roles that Make Santa Fe fulfills for about 200 members, right? But it doesn't have to be big and fancy, and it doesn't have to have laser cutters and things like that. It can literally just be a space that you do creative work in. But it has to separate you from the pressures of your life, right? In other words, you can't sit down to do creative work on your computer if you've got notifications turned on, right? Because otherwise you're just constantly being sucked in to that work mode. So that means getting rid of phones sometimes, social media, notifications, phone calls. You got to separate yourself physically from those things. And it can look a lot of different ways. This is Adam Savage. Anybody knew Adam Savage is? Mythbuster, amazing maker, visited our space one time. I met him. He was in Santa Fe a couple of years ago. His space is an assault on the senses. I don't know. The way that he works creatively is he likes to have everything at hand, right? If he has an idea, he wants to immediately be able to execute that. And that is incredible, right? That doesn't work for everybody. But he feels comfortable in that space, right? Colin Furze, another one of my another one of the makers that I admire. This guy is a YouTuber. He's amassed like 14 million followers by making crazy flame-powered and mechanically powered things. He does all of his work, and I encourage you to check it out. He does all of his work in a shed. That's his entire space. He's got one more wall over there, right? But that's the way he operates. The point is, you need to find a way to become undisturbed. This is one of my workspaces. It doesn't have to be fancy, right? This is my backyard. Like, I had a circular saw and some wood, right? The point is I was able to separate myself from that work mode stuff. So, you need space. The space needs to separate yourself from the pressures of life. You need to have your creative tools at hand, whatever they are, and you've got to feel comfortable in the space, right? Second requirement, time, right? This is something we're all striving for. We have to have time to be creative. But I see people make a mistake. They think of this requirement as some sort of like abstract future event. If only I could find time. One day I'll have time to be creative. Don't do that. Schedule it with a start and an end. And the end is just as important as the start. Why? Because you need to know that it's going to end so you can completely ignore the work mode stuff, right? If you don't know when it's going to end, they're going to tick away at the back of your brain. You're going to be like, oh yeah, I still got all those emails I need to answer. Oh my gosh, there's that meeting I have to do tomorrow. I got to prepare that presentation for Creative Mornings, right? All of that stuff is going to tick away unless you can say, I'm going to do it from here to here, right? This is the one that I struggle with the most. Good thing I'm not using that thing. Yeah, yeah, humor. So yeah, time is the one I struggle with the most. You can ask my partner, Vanessa, right here. I am a habitual work motor, right? I will sit down to be creative and I will find myself answering emails. That doesn't count as creative time, right? Now, I think it's important to do this regularly, right? And for me, what works is about 2 to 3 hours once a week, right? It's not a lot of time, but it is my active creative time. This is the stuff where I can say, if I get a chance to do it and if I hold myself accountable, I can say, I'm ignoring everything, I'm shutting everything out, and I'm just going to be creative, right? So every week, 2 to 3 hours, I sit down to try to do that, right? Am I successful at it? No, but I try. The first 30 minutes of that time, your brain is going to flood you with all of that work mode stuff, right? You just gotta You just gotta ignore it. You just gotta wait. There's no like magic recipe for making it go away. It's just patience, right? So that means you're gonna get 2 to 3 hours worth of just like dedicated creative time, but it takes effort to get into it. But there is a such thing of having too much of that creative time, right? Because our brains are working really hard and we'll exhaust ourselves. So there's an end time to it. But having done that active creative time, it allows us to have the passive creative time that allows the pondering. Because once you've done that, once you put in your active creative time, you can then have passive time to ponder and to think, right? And to brush up against the problem throughout your day, right? And your subconscious cooks on it, it works on it. We've all experienced this, right? Once we introduce those problems, those creative challenges, and we let our brain cook on them overnight or throughout our day or when we're doing whatever, emails or whatever we're doing, our subconscious will reward us in the shower the next morning, right? We've all experienced this thing, right? Where it's like, oh my gosh, how come the shower gives me all of my amazing ideas? The active creative time gave you those ideas and your brain cooked on them, right? And then when you're comfortable, it rewards you with them. So you have to spend all of that time and it takes effort, right? That pondering and thinking takes days sometimes. And we gotta stop stealing that time away from ourselves, right? Pondering time, the more pondering time, the better your creative output. That's really the gist of it, right? The more time you can spend working on the problem, the better it is. But this requires a significant amount of resilience, right? This is our third requirement. Resilience is the ability to stick with the problem. It's the ability to fail over and over again. We got the good idea, let's try it. It doesn't work, we do it again, right? It's our ability to continue. It's normal, like we're all under deadlines creatively, right? Everybody's got them. So it's normal to feel anxiety and pressure and, oh my gosh, I need to get it done. But we need to make sure we're preserving that time, right? And that takes resilience and it takes you telling your project manager and your bosses that if I give it to you today, it's not going to be as good as if I give it to you on the deadline, right? Early doesn't count. Now, I've worked with a lot of creatives in my life. I spent 10 years being a scenic designer, which meant I got to collaborate with countless creatives and costumes and lights and etc. I've worked in spaces like this. I've built sets, I've made websites. There's lots of things and a lot of collaboration opportunities with other people. And the ones that are able to be the most creative are the ones that tolerate that comfort and that anxiety for longer, right? They don't give in to that pressure of I need to get it done. They say, no, I'm waiting. I'm gonna think, right? They're happy existing without a solution, right? They're letting their brain cook on it. They're okay with exploring ideas, essentially. This means that they reframe their deadlines, right? Instead of thinking about a deadline as like, a deadline, they think about it as permission to work on the problem for longer, right? So an idea is introduced, they spend their active creative time on it, and then they ponder and figure on it for a while, and right up until that date. That gives them permission to think about it, right? This is me on a motorcycle trip working. Because I had spent 5 hours riding a motorcycle pondering on an idea and then it came to me, right? I was like, oh my gosh. So I pulled out my laptop and did a little bit of my work mode stuff, right? Before making a decision, ask yourself, when do I need to decide? And then defer that decision until that moment, right? I actually had this experience in prepping for this talk. Tracy, bless his heart, asked for my slide deck last week. And I pulled it up to send it to him and was like, no, I don't think I need it. I'm going to redo it all, right? I should have told him. But in the back of my brain, I sort of knew that I didn't really need it last week, right? I could spend more time thinking and pondering on the talk, and that's what I did. So I let my brain cook. I brushed up against the problem of putting this together right up until the deadline. I apologize. Right? So deadlines aren't about ending the work. They're safeguarding the time needed to be creative, right? That's the reframe. Oh, this slide's little bit out of order. That's okay. So basically the point is, don't be decisive, right? As creatives, when we're asked to solve a problem in the moment, it's counterproductive, right? We're not able to do our creative work. We're just able to do our work mode stuff. We're able to do our like regular human, I know about a subject stuff. But that's often not what we're asked for, right? We're asked for the creative work. So use up the time. Use it all up, right? All of it. Don't steal away that creative process. So our fourth requirement is confidence, right? This comes to play in a lot of situations. We have to be confident because problem solving is hard. We have to be confident because being creative is hard, because advocating for our ideas is hard, communicating those ideas is hard. And we can't onboard people into our creative process or our ideas that got cooked up in the shower if we're not confident with ourselves, right? So we need to find ways to build confidence. Now, one of the ways that I build confidence, and I would strongly suggest you try to find a similar way of being, is you dive into projects that you know nothing about, right? So this was a COVID project. It started in 2020, September, I think, 2020. And I spent about 10 months building a cedar strip canoe, right? Now, there's a couple of reasons why I chose a cedar strip canoe. One of them is I like woodworking, right? The other one is because I knew that I wasn't going to have a purpose for this thing at the end, right? I live in the desert. But I needed, in that time, right, I was a web developer at the time, and you all remember everybody was moving online. I had way too much work. I found myself in work mode and not in creative mode for the vast majority of my time. And so I needed a project where I could just be creative, and I needed something that I didn't know anything about to allow my brain to cook, right? So I was able to dive into this, and I learned new skills like joinery and wood bending and caning and fiberglass and carving, and every one of those things I made countless mistakes, and I had to restart, but all of those resulted in a whole bunch of micro successes, right? And those micro successes are the things that build confidence, right? That's what we're looking for. The only way to do that is to fail over and over and over and over again, and then solve the problem over and over and over and over and over again, right? Building confidence isn't about a huge, big success that I did that one time. It's iterative failure, iterative success, right? I did make it, and I did take it to a lake. And John Cleese, you know, in that talk that I showed at the beginning, he says this: nothing will stop you from being creative faster than the fear of making a mistake. We've got to be confident enough in ourselves to fail. The harder you fail, the better, right? As long as it doesn't affect other people and their paychecks, it's okay, right? It's okay. So find ways to create for literally no immediate practical purpose. We're all creatives in this room. We probably all work for creative stuff. Find ways to do your creative thing and not give it to a client, right? I used to tell people, paint and then burn the painting, create and then burn it down, make a box in welding and then smash it, right? All of those things are very valuable, even though you're not getting a paycheck from them, right? Confidence in yourself allows you to make the weird choice. It allows you to explore ideas. The fifth requirement, the fifth and last requirement, humor. Or as I like to say, lessons I learned from my dog. So this is Rigby. Unfortunately, she passed away at the beginning of this year, but she lived with me for like 11 years and taught me so much about how to approach a problem, right? Dogs have this ability to dive into problems with the most playful energy, right? It doesn't matter how serious or important it is to them. They do it with this like lightheartedness, right? And creativity requires that sort of frame of mind, right? It requires that playfulness. It requires that lightness. And I think that especially for those of us that work in hard problems, we confuse seriousness with solemnness, right? I don't think that there's a place for solemnity in creativity, right? I don't think it's useful. I think that we can approach a serious problem with humor and lightness. And that allows us to understand it a little bit better. There's a beautiful example. I was working on a web campaign about opioids and the opioid crisis, right? Super serious. 1 in 4 people that are prescribed opioids get addicted to them. We're talking heavy subjects. And we had an advisor, I think he was an advisor role, his name was Bernie, and he was an addict in his past life, and he would always break that solemnity with the most hilarious, dark jokes. It was amazing. And out of those meetings, we would always come up with these incredibly creative solutions, right? So it's important for us not to confuse seriousness with solemnity. We can approach serious problems with humor. We can laugh through serious problems. Who's been to a funeral where the jokes are the best jokes, right? That's because we're trying to get past that serious moment with humor. That's how we work, right? So the act of laughing does not make our big serious problems any less serious, right? This quote by William Shakespeare, laughing faces do not mean that there's an absence of sorrow. It just means they have the ability to deal with it, right? This is something I think about when I'm in tough times, right? It's okay to laugh about stuff. Me and Vanessa, we laugh about Rigby consistently in our lives because she farted a lot. Anytime somebody farts, it's the ghost of Rigby, right? It's just the way that it works. And you know, that's how I dealt with like losing my companion for the 10 years, is with humor. I would remember all the ridiculous, crazy things that she would do. And so we can approach serious projects with humor, but we cannot approach creative projects with solemnity, right? We can't do it. We can't do it from that place. We're either free to play or we're not. And you can't play when you're in solemnity. So we need space to be creative. We need time to put towards creativity. We need resilience to handle those failures, confidence to try and communicate the hard things, and humor to free your mind. Yeah? Awesome. That's all I got. Oh.